God ever gave such instructions for the consecration of his priests? If you should see the South Sea Islanders going through such a performance, you could not keep your face straight. And will you tell me that it had to be done in order to consecrate a man to the service of the infinite God? Supposing the blood got on the left toe? Then we find in this book how God went to work to make the Egyptians let the Israelites go. Suppose we wish to make a treaty with the Mikado of Japan, and Mr. Hayes sent a commissioner there, and suppose he should employ Hermann, the wonderful German, to go along with him. And when they came in the presence of the Mikado, Hermann threw down an umbrella which changed into a turtle, and the commissioner said, "This is my certificate." You would say the country is disgraced. You would say the president of a republic like this disgraces himself with jugglery. Yet we are told God sent Moses and Aaron before Pharaoh, and when they got there, Moses threw down a stick which turned into a snake. That God is a juggler. He is the infinite prestidigitator. Is that possible? Was that really a snake, or was it the appearance of a snake? If it was the appearance of a snake, it was a fraud. Then the necromancers of Egypt were sent for, and they threw down sticks which turned into snakes, but those were not so large as Moses' snakes, which swallowed them. I maintain that it is just as hard to make small snakes as it is to make large ones. The only difference is that to make large snakes, either larger sticks or more practice is required. Do you believe that God rained hail on innocent cattle, killing them in the highways and in the field? Why should he inflict punishment on cattle for something their owners had done? I could never have any respect for a God that would so inflict pain upon a brute beast simply on account of the crime of its owner. Is it possible that God worked miracles to convince Pharaoh that slavery was wrong? Why did he not tell Pharaoh that any nation founded on slavery could not stand? Why did he not tell him, "Your government is founded on slavery, and it will go down, and the sands of the desert will hide from the view of man your temples, your altars, and your fanes"? Why did he not speak about the infamy of slavery? Because he believed in the infamy of slavery himself. Can we believe that God will allow a man to give his wife the right of divorcement and make the mother of his children a wanderer and a vagrant? There is not one word about woman in the Old Testament except the word of shame and humiliation. The God of the Bible does not think woman is as good as man. She never was worth mentioning. It did not take the pains to recount the death of the mother of us all. I have no respect for any book that does not treat woman as the equal of man. And if there is any God in this universe who thinks more of me than he thinks of my wife, he is not well acquainted with both of us. And yet they say that that was done on account of the hardness of their hearts, and that was done in a community where the law was so fierce that it stoned a man to death for picking up sticks on Sunday. Would it not have been better to stone to death every man who abused his wife and allowed them to pick up sticks on account of the hardness of their hearts? If God wanted to take those Jews from Egypt to the land of Canaan, why didn't he do it instantly? If he was going to do a miracle, why didn't he do one worth talking about? After God had killed all the firstborn in Egypt, after he had killed all the cattle, still Egypt could raise an army that could put to flight 600,000 men. And because this God overwhelmed the Egyptian army, he bragged about it for 1,000 years, repeatedly calling the attention of the Jews to the fact that he overthrew Pharaoh and his hosts. Did he help much with their 600,000 men? We find by the records of the day that the Egyptian standing army at the time was never more than 100,000 men. Must we believe all these stories in order to get to heaven when we die? Must we judge of a man's character by the number of stories he believes? Are we to get to heaven by creed or by deed? That is the question. Shall we reason or shall we simply believe? But they say the Bible is not inspired about those little things. The Bible says the rabbit and the hare chew the cud. But they do not. They have a tremulous motion of the lip, but that being that made them says they chew the cud. The Bible, therefore, is not inspired in natural history. Is it inspired in its astrology? No. Well, what is it inspired in? In its law? Thousands of people say that if it had not been for the 10 Commandments, we would not have known any better than to rob or steal. Suppose a man planted an acre of potatoes, hoed them all summer, and dug them in the fall. And suppose a man had sat upon the fence all the time and watched him. Do you believe it would be necessary for that man to read the 10 Commandments to find out who, in his judgment, had a right to take those potatoes? All laws against larceny had been made by industry to protect the fruits of its labor. Why is there a law against murder? Simply because a large majority of people object to being murdered. That is all. And all these laws were in force thousands of years before that time. One of the commandments said they should not make any graven images, and that was the death of art in Palestine. No sculptor has ever enriched stone with the divine forms of beauty in that country. And any commandment that is the death of art is not a good commandment. But they say the Bible is morally inspired, and they tell me there is no civilization without this Bible. Then God knows that just as well as you do. God always knew it. And if you can't civilize a nation without a Bible, why didn't God give every nation just one Bible to start with? Why did God allow hundreds of thousands and billions of billions to go down to hell just for the lack of a Bible? They say that it is morally inspired. Well, let us examine it. I want to be fair about this thing because I am willing to stake my salvation or damnation upon this question, whether the Bible is true or not. I say it is not. And upon that I am willing to wager my soul. Is there a woman here who believes in the institution of polygamy? Is there a man here who believes in that infamy? You say, no, we do not. Then you are better than your God was 4,000 years ago. 4,000 years ago he believed in it, taught it, and upheld it. I pronounce it and denounce it, the infamy of infamies. It robs our language of every sweet and tender word in it. It takes the fireside away forever. It takes the meaning out of the words father, mother, sister, brother, and turns the temple of love into a vile den where crawl the slimy snakes of lust and hatred. I was in Utah a little while ago, and was on the mountain where God used to talk to Brigham Young. He never said anything to me. I said that it was just as reasonable that God in the 19th century should talk to a polygamist in Utah as it was that 4,000 years ago on Mount Sinai he talked to Moses upon that hellish and damnable question. I have no love for any God who believes in polygamy. There is no heaven on this earth save where the one woman loves the one man and the one man loves the one woman. I guess it is not inspired on the polygamy question. Maybe it is inspired about religious liberty. God said if anybody differs with you about religion, kill him. He told his peculiar people, if anyone teaches a different religion, kill him. He did not say try and convince him that he is wrong, but kill him. He did not say I am in the miracle business and I will convince him, but kill him. He said to every husband, if your wife that you love as you love your own soul says, let us go and worship other gods, Then thy hand shall be the first upon her, and she shall be stoned with stones until she dies. Well, now, I hate a God of that kind, and I cannot think of being nearer heaven than to be away from him. A God tells a man to kill his wife simply because she differs with him on religion. If the real God were to tell me to kill my wife, I would not do it. If you had lived in Palestine at that time, and your wife, the mother of your children, had woke up at night and said, I am tired of Jehovah. He is always turning up that board bill. He is always telling about whipping the Egyptians. He is always killing somebody. I am tired of him. Let's worship the sun. The sun has clothed the world in beauty. It has covered the earth with green and flowers. By its divine light I first saw your face. Its light has enabled me to look into the eyes of my beautiful babe. Let us worship the sun, father and mother of light and love and joy. Then what would it be your duty to do? Kill her? Do you believe a real God ever did that? Your hand should be first upon her, and when you took up some ragged rock and hurled it against a white bosom filled with love for you, and saw running away the red current of her sweet life, then you would look up to heaven and receive the congratulations of the infinite fiend whose commandments you had to obey. I guess the Bible was not inspired about religious liberty. Let me ask you right here, suppose, as a matter of fact, God gave those laws to the Jews and told them whenever a man preaches a different religion, kill him. And suppose that afterwards the same God took upon himself flesh and came to the world and taught and preached a different religion, and the Jews crucified him. Did he not reap exactly what he sowed? Maybe this book is inspired about war. God told the Israelites to overrun that country and kill every man, woman, and child for defending their native land. Kill the old men? Yes. Kill the women? Certainly. And the little dimpled babes in the cradle that smile and coo in the face of murder? Dash out their brains. This is the will of God. Will you tell me that any God ever commanded such infamy? Kill the men and the women and the young men and the babes. What shall we do with the maiden? Give them to the rabble murderers. Do you believe that God ever allowed the roses of love and the violets of modesty that shed their perfume in the heart of a maiden to be trampled beneath the brutal feet of lust? If there is any God, I pray to him to write in the book of eternal remembrance opposite to my name that I denied that lie. Whenever a woman reads a Bible and comes to that passage, she ought to throw the book from her in contempt and scorn. Do you tell me that any decent God would do that? What would the devil have done under the same circumstances? Just think of it. And yet that is the God that we want to get into the Constitution. That is the God we teach our children about, so that they will be sweet and tender, amiable and kind. That monster, that fiend! I guess the Bible is not inspired about religious liberty, nor about war. Then if it is not inspired about these things, maybe it is inspired about slavery. God tells the Jews to buy up the children of the heathen round about, and they should be servants for them. What is a servant? If they struck a servant and he died immediately, punishment was to follow. But if the injured man should linger a while, there was no punishment, because the servant represented their money. Do you believe that it is right that God made one man to work for another and to receive pay in rations? Do you believe God said that a whip on the naked back was the legal tender for labor performed? Is it possible that the real God ever gave such infamous, bloodthirsty laws? What more does he say? When the time of a married slave expired, he could not take his wife and children with him. Then, if the